Hello, everybody. You are tuned into Otsego 2000 Presents. This is a discussion series where I, Chris Carr, speak with various guests that may live in Otsego County, may not, and we talk about their love, their passion, their commitment to nature, the environment, the outdoors, and their personal efforts in conservation, and the hopes that we can build an idea of best practices and personalize the issues so that it's not necessarily about politics or intellectualizing everything, but how, as people, these issues are important to us. So today, our special guest is, introduce yourself.
I'm Susan Rosengrant, and I live on Lake Canadarago in Richfield Springs.
Awesome. We ran into each other in the co-op, and I've seen you around. We have common friends in the area. And I found out that you were a biologist, I believe.
Yes, I was a biology teacher for too many years to mention.
Yes. And when we met, we got into a discussion about the lake. So before we get into the specifics of that, can you just give people some background into how you got into the area, and what you enjoy about being around Richfield?
Oh, wow. Okay, that's a good question. Um, I grew up in Western New York and ended up migrating, so to speak, to Westchester County, where I got my first teaching job. And I kept working there throughout my whole career, going from being a biology teacher to a middle school principal and then a high school principal. So I put 31 years into that and really enjoyed it. And when I didn't anymore, then I decided it was time to retire. So I retired in 2001. And why did I look for some place to move to for retirement in that area? Was basically my one of my best friends, teaching friends, was from Cooperstown, and she had worked with me and then had moved to back to Cooperstown, and we visited all the time. I mean, like we were just such fast friends that we connected back continuously, even after she had left, which was probably in the 90s. So I looked at property all around Cooperstown and nothing. Yeah, I mean, it was either out of my reach financially or needed so much work I didn't have the talent or the wherewithal to fix it up. But I really wanted to be on. I would have loved to have been on Otsego Lake, of course. That was totally out of my reach. Long story short, someone told me that there was a lake house going on sale. It wasn't even on the market yet, on another lake, just close to Otsego, 15 minutes away. And I go, I'd check that out. So I did check it out, and the rest is history. It turned out to be a beautiful place that has $1 million view, and we're so lucky to have gotten the place. And so we've been there ever since. That was 2001. And I still see my friend Diane in Cooperstown. We just had dinner this past week. And it's the rolling hills. I mean, the farmland, the not farmland, the people, the actually the culture there is with the opera house and Otsego 2000. And I guess I took a break from doing any kind of volunteer work at all when I first retired because I needed to rest. I needed to let my body heal. And so after 2 years, I started getting I'm watching the school buses go up 28, and I went, I need to do something. And people talked to me about our lake association. I became a member immediately, and somehow I just got pulled in. And it was about 5, maybe 6 years ago that we got to found out from NYSFOLA, which is New York State Federation of Lake Associations, that they had a citizen science program called CSLAP. And CSLAP is really citizen science lake assessment program. And so it's all volunteer. And I just started looking at, well, what could we do? Ended up getting on the board, and I guess because of my experience being an organizer and leader in schools, I just gravitated towards that. The science part is simple. As I tell people, it's not rocket science, but you have to pay attention to detail. And I've got really lucky. We have this, I believe, is our sixth year. We have 10 people on our team. And I do all the administrative work, but we also go out and collect the water. So I don't know what you want to know about it. You can shoot me some questions and I'll try to answer them for you.
Well, yeah. Initially, when you started spending time around the lake and you found out there was a chance to get involved, what were some of the concerns, or what are the issues that affect our lake, like either Canadarago, or affect our general area and might have effect like on Otsego Lake? Like, what were some of the issues or concerns?
Okay, well, when I first got or joined the Lake Association and was there at the lake more than I had been, because it was more go in the summer when we could, and things like that. And then when I was getting there and starting at springtime or whatever, it was looking at what are the needs. And I found that really with our lake is really, it's called a deep lake technically, but it's not that deep. It's only about 45, I think, feet deep. And that's at its deepest. It's a very interesting lake because it has 5 inlets and 1 outlet. So the biggest concern, I remember in 2006, we had a 100-year flood.
Okay.
That our house is up on a hill, so we were not really affected like a lot of other people were. Also, about 2/3 of Canadarago Lake has wetlands. There are some camps on the wetlands, but for the most part, to do any new building, you cannot go there. So I've heard from, you can't take me, up to task on this, but I've heard from people that have been there for their whole lives that there was they formed the Lake Association because of not enough water in the lake.
Okay.
So historically, the Lake Association formed to put a dam up in Oaks Creek, which is really the outlet for the lake. And basically, I don't know if you've been there, Chris, it's just a board. It's really technically a weir. So it's just a board across in some cement. People think it's like the Hoover Dam. It is not.
Mm-hmm.
So it held the water back, so people didn't have to put their docks out. I think they used to have to put like 4 or 5 or even sometimes 6 lengths of dock out to be able to get to water that they could keep their boats in.
Okay.
Not so anymore because of the dam. And also there's a natural dam that occurred over time with a sand silt being poured in from another little creek that is right near the outlet, so that no matter what we do with the board, putting it up and down, it doesn't do a heck of a lot. The silt is our dam.
Okay.
And so if we get, I mean, we've talked about trying to show to especially new residents when they're complaining about the water's too high or the water's too low, but mostly too high. If you took a bucket and drilled 5 holes into it where you put tubes and you poured water in and had one tube out, one hole with tube out as the outlet, you get a lot of rain or snowfall that's becomes snow melt or the combination of two. That is not going to, the outlet cannot handle the amount of water coming through. So that was the first thing that people on the lake wanted to get taken care of. So the dam was built.
Okay.
So the silt bar came much later, but now creates a problem today of water not getting out. There's plenty, you don't have to put out your dock so far, but the water doesn't go out as fast as people would like it to. So, like nature does what she wants in a way. And I understand also, and this is just historical stories, anecdotes, if you will, that people have told me that the water was pretty dirty.
Okay.
I mean, literally like garbage, sewage into it and all that. Now, I think some of that was taken care of because Richfield, the town of Richfield built a sewage treatment plant at the north end. So the water, when I looked at the lake to buy on the lake, the neighbor, our wonderful neighbor, gave me a ride around the whole lake and told me some of this history, but also said that where was I going with this?
About the
That,
cleanliness?
pardon me?
You were mentioning the cleanliness.
Yeah, she had said how dirty it was. Oh, right, thank you. And it's tough getting older. Uh, she said that actually Canadarago Lake was like the second or third cleanest lake in New York State at that time, and that was 2001. So things were pretty good. Now, I think people know that there's a boat launch on our lake.
Right.
And that's a public boat launch, which I think is great because people should have access to such a beautiful place. There's also Baker's Beach, which the public can go to. So New York State oversees everything on the boat launch. So people coming in have their boats inspected at this time. I don't know when they started actually examining boats going in, but I couldn't give you a date on that. But as long as I've been there in 2001, that has happened. So that's called a lake steward program, and the lake stewards actually check the boats out upside. I don't even know all the places because I'm not a boater, except in my kayak. But and actually, kayaks are a problem too, if there's any invasive species on it. Now, in my 20 some years that I've been there, we have gotten zebra mussels. We have gotten milfoil. We've gotten, that stony starwort, or it's a really, it just chokes everything. There used to be in the lake a sandbar, another sandbar. They called it a sunken island.
Okay.
And people would go there and throw their anchor in and hang out all day because the water was only up to here. So you could swim around in it. You could hang out and raft up, so to speak, back then. But that's become so loaded with, I mean, it was literally like a sandbar. And now there's a lot of green living things there that people call weeds, or not, technically are not weeds. They're a plant that grows in the lake naturally. And that's an occurrence that happens just naturally. Uh, our lake, well after we're gone, hopefully hundreds of years from now, will be a forest
Huh.
because all the things that grow in there, green plants, die, fill it up, and provide fertilizer for more plants to grow. Those die and fill it up so that it would become like a pond and then like a little marshy area and eventually maybe just a little bit of wetlands with a stream running through and ultimately so filled in that a forest would grow. So we don't want that to happen sooner.
Right.
So trying to control the weeds and any other invasive species, we have had what are called HABs. We always use an acronym so that we don't have to say harmful algae blooms, but that's what HAB stands for. That's been very disconcerting doing the monitoring of the waters, seeing harmful algae blooms so often and so much earlier in the season. They will happen all the time because when conditions are right, which summertime, heat, less motion of the water, less motion of the air, it's prime situation for the HABs to explode in population.
Can
So
you can you explain to folks who don't understand? I think they may understand like invasive species or the idea of um, why we'd want to monitor and possibly have some involvement with how the lake evolves. But what are algae blooms? What's the danger? What when you're saying HABs, can you give us some perspective?
I sure can. I am not an expert, I'll say that. But what I know about harmful algae blooms is they're not really algae, they're cyanobacteria. So they are toxic. And in fact, most of them have neurotoxins in them, and neuro means nerve. So if you're exposed to it, it can affect nerves. Now, exactly what it does to humans would depend upon what kind of algae bloom it is. Um, I do know that at 1 year we had two dogs pass away from going in the water, and they probably were labs. If Labrador retrievers are notorious, they've got to be in the water. They got to drink the water. They want to play with the ball. They get water into their system, and it affected them to the point where they died. We don't know that that happens with humans. In fact, some people say, "Well, yeah, I got a rash, but that's all I got." But small children, we just say err on the side of caution. And having been a middle school principal and a high school principal, all the things that can happen in a school, I had to always, and it was like rule number one, safety.
Right.
Rule number one, safety. I am responsible for everybody in this school building, and therefore I am going to rule on the side of caution. So the CSLAP program, we collect water and we check how clear the water is, which can be an indicator too of is an algae bloom imminent. We take the temperature of the water, we take the temperature of the air. Like I said, no rocket science. It's just pay attention, and we got to do it in Celsius. All those kinds of things to make it really scientific. And then we go on land and we pour the water into containers that go to a lab and get tested at the lab. They test for phosphorus and nitrates, especially. Those are things that are food for green living things and algae. I mean, it's like caviar for HABs to ingest. and they don't ingest it, they absorb them. It's not like they're eating it through with their mouths. We also check the weather and try to keep track of that. Now we do this once every 2 weeks. We have 8 sessions over the summertime, and that's all that we can afford to do right now for monitoring in that way. Actually, cutting edge right now. I'm working with somebody from OCCA, Will Cuss, who is a staff member who's very excited about doing some inlet studies. Now, in there would be they'd be looking for different things, like actual critters that live there that are indicators that there's some problem going on, or not. They get dissolved oxygen, and they check for phosphorus and nitrates too coming through. So in all that, every year then, after taking 8 studies, and it's connected with DEC, the Department of Environmental Conservation, they put together a report for us to say, what do you notice changing over from last year to this year, and what's the trend? And the trend has been, surprisingly, sometimes phosphorus isn't so bad, but the nitrates are. I mean, it'll vary. Let's see, what else?
Good question.
Sure.
When we're looking at how either nitrates or phosphorgens get into the lake, what are some of the possible human contributors or contributions? Like, are we getting runoff from animal, like from pastures, farms? Are we getting human septic or sewage into the lake? Is it just an occurrence due to pollen? Like, where do these additional elements come from?
Okay, that's a really good question. All of the above. Actually, it can come from like a sewage treatment plant that's overwhelmed by a lot of rain. Like if we get 4 or 5 inches of rain, we could get that. But we have not monitored that. We have not had the funds to monitor. So that's why I'm looking to see what would it cost so that we could do some fundraising or maybe get a grant to do studies of the at least 2 or 3 of the 5 different inlets. Not, that we have to also mention that there's a lot of just plain runoff that aren't considered real inlets, because an inlet comes from far away. It's in the watershed, which could be 20 miles away. So honestly, aside from people that come in from maybe they've been on the Erie Canal and they come in to boat, if the lake stewards don't catch, that's how I think how zebra mussels got in. Zebra mussels have very tiny, microscopic eggs and larvae. They come in, they start growing, and once they start growing, they go crazy.
And they come in on the bottom of boats, or
yeah, yep. But they could also come through the waterways.
Okay.
So humans do affect the whatever grows in the water too. And so we're going to have to monitor and see what's exactly going on now to be able to see what can we do. There's been talk about putting sewers around the whole lake. I don't know. I have a brand new engineered septic system that I think is fine, but not everybody does. And like, how much is it going to cost to hook up to the sewer, and what are taxes on it? These are concerns that people have around the lake. However, like if we want property values to stay up, we want the lake to stay clean, not to mention because we're looking out at it, we wouldn't want to see floating feces or anything like that. So that would be, it's in our best interests. And because I am a homeowner and taxpayer, and I have already put the outlay for a really good septic system, I can see where people would balk about that. But is that a way to take care of the situation? Absolutely. Canadarago is actually borders 3 towns. So you've not only got to get Richfield, you have to get Otsego and Exeter to agree to things. We have the Lake Association did do a feasibility study, and what the feasibility study was for was only to find out if the sewer treatment plant that's already there could handle all the effluent from people around the lake. Canadarago is also unique in that I'm told there are 600 different camps, plus or minus, around the lake. But let me tell you, last week when I was driving by, I'm like, nobody's there, nobody's there, nobody's there. Oh, there's somebody there. So like, and there are some old camps that probably no one goes there except maybe once every 2 years to check on it, or maybe not even that.
Right.
Yeah, I really don't know, but just being an observant kind of person, it's a scientist in me. I try to be aware, and I go, what's if we have real problems, which right now we're doing okay. We do have the invasive species and milfoil and the starry stonewort. They're just so thick that when they die, they start filling in even quicker.
Yeah.
And I think I failed to mention that the cyanobacteria live on the bottom of the water. So they're at the bottom, deep, 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 and they don't come up to the top until the conditions are really good. So last year was the first year that we had in June a harmful algae bloom.
Okay.
Otherwise, it would usually be late July, maybe August. But what that shows us or tells us is that the temperatures have risen, and they are rising, and it's pushing back into time that, June was early summer when I first moved there. Now it's like May could be early summer.
Right.
And I love looking at my $1 million view, but I also enjoy going out kayaking. And the first time, I really don't remember what year it was, but it was several years back. And before we started doing the CSLAP studies, went, oh, look at those pretty purple things in the water. And then I found out that that was a harmful algae bloom, which was repeated this past year, but worse than ever. I mean, the water looked thick, almost like if you took a big soup scoop,
Yeah, like a ladle.
up, it'd be like Jello, or before Jello really got solid, and it was because it was so thick with the harmful algae.
Now, for people watching this that aren't in the New York area, I believe this is an issue that's happening in numerous regions around the country. I know when I was down in Florida, there are entire beaches that get closed due to the algae blooms. I believe out in parts of the California coastline, there are times of the year to where you can't go in the water due to the algae blooms, but that they are different. And like you said, these are actual bacteria. It's not just algae, and it's not the same thing everywhere. So that depending on where you are nationally, it may be a different type of cyanobacteria.
Yes, exactly. A typical one that I know I've heard of, I don't have not experienced, but in in the South, it would be the red tide, which is it's a red algae, red cyanobacteria. We had that purple one in ours. I'm like, it was very pretty. What the first time I saw it, I went, oh, little flakes of purple, and then this past year having that not so pretty anymore in my eye. Yeah, it's all over, and so we're not unique. Canadarago Lake is unique for me because I love it. I spend my lifetime there now, but um, it's not unique. And what people have to realize, I think they do if they've studied science at all, um, that it's just like our bodies. We've got our heart, and all these blood vessels go out, and there are bigger blood vessels, and then they get smaller, 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 and capillaries.
Right.
So there are capillaries that are many, many miles away from Canadarago and Otsego that feed into that. In fact, if anybody wants to look at a map, if they don't know um, where the Chesapeake Bay is, just look at a map. It's a long ways away. My niece lives on the Chesapeake Bay in Maryland. That means anything that's up in Otsego Lake, because Otsego has the Susquehanna River. That's the waterheads, the head waters of the Susquehanna. It goes right down and ends up in the Chesapeake Bay. So whatever happens to Otsego happens to Chesapeake Bay and everything along the way. You can't. It's like you can't put up a barrier. It's just like I think of how Native Americans, they always said, you know, go downstream to do things. You don't want to go upstream because it's coming right back at you. But we have to think of that. And in reality, it's sort of like it's all connected.
Well,
It is.
that's something that I can appreciate in exploring waterways and exploring the love of the waterways. The different reasons people are drawn to it, whether they are hikers or people who just like enjoy time out and enjoy the views and the environment, the people who are active in boating, water skiing, what have you, the swimmers, kayakers, um, and the people who just also love the wildlife around waterways. It's something that's gone across party lines or across political lines. It's something that's not just young or old. It's something that I found to be a connective tissue amongst different community members and also geographically connective because I have friends down in Delaware County where they're in the watershed and in the area around the reservoir. And the water protection there is a constant conversation. My family lives in the DC area, and I met up with the Potomac Conservancy. They're doing a lot of work in the DC, Maryland, and Virginia area around Chesapeake protection. I work with some friends down in Mississippi and Louisiana and the area along the Gulf. And people in different states of various backgrounds, whether it's racial, ethnic, whether it's age, whether it's class, are working together to try to protect some of the wetlands that are no longer protected. And so I see the waterways as a unifying element, and that it is literally interconnected. That what happens here will influence what happens there, and vice versa. And I guess in closing, or as we lead towards the end of the conversation, what can people do, right? So I think a lot of folks say, I love the waterways. I see what's happening. I'm so overwhelmed. I don't know what to do. And so we try to give people individual things they can do. Like an example would be you volunteering with the Lake Association or with SLAP. What are things that people can do on an individual or maybe family scale to be involved in either protection or awareness?
Oh wow. It's one thing that real I could get real hot under the collar about is not littering. Like cigarette smokers, that's their business to do that, but flicking their cigarette out the window of their car, the filter has carcinogenic items in it.
Okay.
Those, where do they think they go? They go on, they're on the roadside. It rains, then those big puddles that go along the side and then go down the catch basins, the drains, they end up in marshes and swamps that eventually get into the lakes and eventually bays and the ocean. So, like, don't litter. Anything like that
I
is
think
a
you're
good
bringing
thing.
up something. I don't know much at all about what happens to refuse. So the idea that our plan of action as humans at times have been put all our trash on a boat, send it far enough away from the shore and dump it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have assumed that. I think there are people that may not know our roadside detritus isn't necessarily captured somewhere, but that it gets purposefully put into our waterways. And so, like you're saying, littering very important. What other things stand out that people can do?
Well, they can do things like if they live on a lake, test their water, the water out in front of them. Um, Things like just even saving water, like brushing your teeth and not having the water running all the time. Everything that we put in the water, like solid things, the plastic's going to come up on the shore, pick it up. Picking it up is a good thing. But there are things that we use. I was thinking of this just when I was cleaning my bathroom. I go, wait a minute, what's in this? Because if there are carcinogenic or any kind of chemical that is not soluble in water, it stays as itself, and therefore it will be in the water that you drink, no matter how much it's treated by a water treatment plant. It's there, and I'm just saying that to make people aware. So that if you can afford a natural item, a natural cleaning item, that would be really good. But it would be good if you could use natural things like baking soda,
Yeah.
which does dissolve in the water and it doesn't hang in there as an inert. Inert means that it doesn't necessarily do anything to the water itself, but it's going to affect us.
Right.
Um, Gosh, if I had thought about, you know what, I'll probably think of about 30 different things after we.
Well, what's beautiful is when we post the interview, we will post links for people that want more information, and we can include if you've given us some suggestions. But I think you've started with some that are approachable, that are manageable in the sense of not having to point a finger, not having to look so outward at where the change is, but say, what can I do to not litter, to be aware of water usage, be aware of what I'm putting into my environment. And that's a pretty large task, I think, for a lot of folks who are just beginning the process of saying, I want to be purposeful in action and how I engage with nature. The self-discipline is a large step. And
Absolutely.
kind of reminding us of we don't have to start with go to the White House or go to Congress and protest. There are other things we can do until we get to that point.
Right. And too, Chris, Otsego 2000 is a great organization. OLT, Otsego Land Trust. And I mean, wherever you live, there are organizations like that always need volunteers and help. And the big Earth Day on April 22nd, there are I mean, our own town, there are things that go on, and go see what they're doing, learn a little bit more. These are the people that work at it every day, know so much more, and have been totally immersed in it probably for their whole career, and learn something from it, and then try to do one. If we all do one thing, and try each year or each month, try something different to help. We're smart people. We can clean up the planet.
Yeah, yeah, I appreciate that sentiment. Uh, I am a full believer, and maybe I'm delusionally optimistic about it, that we haven't exhausted all the possibilities. Like I think, have a bit more trepidation or be like more frustrated if we tried everything and nothing's working. But it looks like when we self-discipline, when we collectively work and may have to discipline, and when we work with other communities that have found best practices, it seems to have an effect that's positive.
It does. It does. And so I would encourage people to just, you know, if you Google where the nearest restaurant is, you can Google what can I do to help with the environment, and say near me, um, because it'll pick up whatever's going on in the area.
I like that. So on that note, I want to say thank you very much,
You're
and
welcome.
can't wait to get back to the area. I was going to try to do the polar bear, but the lake was partially frozen, and I'm not playing around like that. Um, but next time I'm up, hopefully by March, I'll be able to get back in and get some cold up to my maybe knees. And
I'm hearing a lot of good things about that, doing plunges like that, cold plunges
yeah,
for
so
our health. Yeah.
we'll see you up there. And is there
Yeah.
anything else you'd like to leave us with on the way out?
Um, yeah, I'd say don't give up. The planet is is definitely, I mean, it's going to go whether we're here or not. So if we want to be here, don't give up. Keep working at it.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Again,
you, Chris.
this has been Otsego 2000 Presents. And make sure you like, share, follow all the things below, and come see us in person. All right. Take care.
See ya.
Excellent. Let me